Hey crew, how are we? We've got one of the absolute originals on the platform here. This is Andreas Kali. Andreas has, I think we've tried to figure it out. I think he was number two ever account created on Skillest 9 years ago, which is absolutely wild to think about. And he's been just an absolute force of nature since then. I think all of us have watched his socials. We've watched what he's done with his players that are now playing on the European tour. I think Andreas, you've probably been on the platform long enough that those kids that are now on the DP World Tour were probably about 7 years old or something when you started working with them or something like that.
Yeah, man. Like they weren't, at least they were teenagers.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been wild to watch, and I think that over the period that I've known you and watched, like you've really sort of evolved into really sort of an incredible source of wisdom for a lot of coaches from all sorts of things, like not just like your hardcore technical belief system, but how to manage players, how to manage young players, how to move them into a college system, or how to get them on tour. And it's just been incredible to watch. And you've now distilled everything into a coaching philosophy that people can or coaches can go and experience, which is just fantastic. Because so many players ask me about you. Oh, sorry, coaches ask me about you all the time. Like, how does Andreas do it? Like, not only change golf swings and things like that, but then sort of basically create like the movement that you have. And now people can get access to it. But mate, give us just a little bit of an outline of what you've created, and then what I want to do is talk about how you've sort of got to that point with your philosophy.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, there's a lot of people who ask, right? And there's a lot of people. I started doing some seminars a couple of years ago. Were quite popular, but also like very like one or two people in all kinds of corners of the world were interested in it. And I did it. I really enjoyed it. So when some people who go, you know what, I'd really like to attend. I can't afford the flight. I can't afford the fee. Um, or like, can you come see us? And we're two people, and it just doesn't quite make sense. What I ended up
Yep.
doing was I actually took the latest one I did in Orlando and I recorded the whole thing. And I figured, you know what? Then I got this, and at least I can share that with people who are interested, right?
Mm. Totally. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I mean, I know that coaches have actually sent you their swing to try and understand how you go about like exactly what you do. But like, how would you, I suppose, what are your biggest influences to this point? Like, where do you think, like, when you look at the tree of like where we can all end up in different branches of like philosophy, whether it's hardcore technical stuff, whether it's, philosophical stuff. Like, what were your biggest influences when you started, and how has that evolved?
Like way back when I
Way
started. So
back.
I think I started coaching. What is that now? So 13, 14 years ago, I think. I mean, didn't have a lot of had a lot of questions, couldn't find a lot of answers, really.
Yeah.
Came upon a blog called the Gotham Golf Blog, which was running back then, a guy named Ralph Perez, who was just a super good guy. Had this blog dedicated to the golfing machine, figured I'd purchase it. Golfing machine had at least it had something in there where I was like, I think there's some answers here.
Right.
Because I thought a lot of what I would read and study would be super vague. Um, so did the golfing machine, read it, still read it every now and then. Had some help from some different people, like basically just a lot of YouTube from back then,
Yeah.
watching Greg McHatton, Lynn Blake, who else was it? Ben Doyle, all these guys, and I just kind of liked it.
Mm.
From then, Andy Plummer and Mike Bennett came and did a seminar for the Danish PGA 12 years ago. The Stack and Tilt guys
Yep.
attended that. It fell in line with what I already kind of thought I knew, but it was
Yep.
just more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Really liked that. I spent a lot of years. Every time I could see Andy, I'd see Andy.
Yeah.
Teach, give lessons, but also doing his seminars. I enjoyed it. We've always been good with the Danish PGA and bringing people in. So I mean, there's been so many freaking people that you just kind of attend and you just pay attention to, whether it's um, whether it's James Ridyard or whether it's Tyler Farrell or whether it's Scott Couch or whether it's like I'll just attend because I enjoy it. I think it's really, really fun to sit and listen, right? I
Yeah.
think you pick up stuff along the way and you pick up stuff where you go, you know what? I think that right there could probably, maybe that's a different way of doing what we're working on with this one student or this one student. But I think
Yeah.
that was really the important part was that I attended a lot of seminars. I've seen colleagues of mine who feel like they're getting pulled in all these directions. Like now I'm teaching this, or now I'm teaching
Yeah.
this, and now I'm teaching this, which for me was never the point. It was more like, okay, I know where I want to go. I know what I want to do. Where do I put this? Like, where do I add these tools that I learned?
Mm.
I found a different way of describing this. I found a different way of looking at this. And that could work for this one guy. Like, it's
Mm.
not now I'm just going to do this with everybody, right? Um, so it's always been about expanding my toolbox technically.
Mm.
Now, I think over time from there, at some point, I think really early on, I think I had an idea that, you know what, I'm just going to make bulletproof golf swings. If you're
Yeah.
swinging it perfectly, why would you ever hit a bad shot? And I actually think along those lines, I think quite a few players improved until they stopped improving. I was
Right.
like, how come they're swinging it better than ever, but they're not playing better than ever? Like
Interesting.
that was the feedback loop, right? For me and
Yeah.
for them was the better I swing it, the better I should be playing.
Mm.
And that didn't necessarily go, that didn't go that way all the time, right? So you start going, okay, I don't know. What could that be? Right. Then
Mm.
you start. So basically from there, I've I haven't stopped attending things because I still attend stuff just out of pure interest. But I think the players have, as they've gotten better and gotten to new levels, I think they've come up with new questions and I didn't have the answers.
Mm.
And I would start looking into things, right? So ended up really, really early on with Scott Fawcett, who does the decade stuff.
Right.
It's before this, back when it was called playinglesson.com. Did a bunch of stuff with Scott where I was like, okay, how do I do my on course lessons better? How do I do tournament preparation? How do we pick our targets better? How do we do these things better?
Mm.
And Scott was the guy.
Right.
Super appreciative of him, right? How do we, and all of a sudden guys were going like, the better their technique was getting, basically the less slack they cut themselves. So all of a sudden when they hit one bad shot, the round was over because I
Yeah.
shouldn't be hitting bad shots, because that's why I practiced my swing so much, was to avoid this. And now it happened on the second hole and now the day's ruined.
Yeah.
um and it could, I mean, crap, right? You find out that, you know what, like, what were you actually thinking about when you stood over that golf shot, right? Maybe you were thinking about where not to hit it, or what was for dinner at home, or what your girlfriend was doing. And it turns out that maybe that was the reason you had a bad shot.
Mm.
Probably wasn't the swing. It was probably because your head was up your ass.
Mm.
Then you start going through routines and pre-shot routines. Then you find out, you know what, it's probably not that stringent, but there's probably something about the mindfulness and mental training, right? And then you start going, okay, we've got that part. Then you got some players who've got kind of like not hitting it all that well, but play really well. And you got some players that hit it really well, but don't play that well. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden you go like, okay, let's check your distance control, right? And you find out they don't even know the distances they're hitting these irons, right? And
Yeah.
they don't know, you find out they don't know how to gauge wind. They don't know how to gauge lie. On top of that, they're picking the wrong targets. So I mean, it's like basically having the perfect putting stroke, right? And not being able to read a green. How many putts are you really going to hole? You're not,
Yeah.
unless they're dead straight, you're not going to hole many. So there's like this, as the players got better, I would say the equation just got larger,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
find out some of the guys, all of a sudden they're getting equipment deals, and not just equipment deals with the local reps, but with tour reps. And they go on the bus and you find out what they can do with the equipment, and how much crap that you probably didn't have to really practice on the driving range that you could just fit your way out of. Like,
Right.
it's way easier, right? You have
Yeah.
one guy go like, I tell this story all the time, right? You like out one guy spoke to me at an event this year on the DP World Tour, just came to me, goes, hey, what if you had a player whose long irons weren't launching high enough, what would you do? And I'm going like, I don't know, what would you do? He goes, I probably look at the way they're releasing the club. This is a tour player.
Right.
Beautiful swing. And you know what? I go like, I would have done that too 8 years ago.
Right.
Because what would you do now? I'd check his ball position. Then I would check his equipment. And he
Right.
goes, what do you mean? Just kind of make sure that he has a ball that can launch fairly high, if
Yeah.
that fits into the equation. Or I'd look at his equipment. This guy was with Callaway. I go like, can I see what your 4-iron is? He's got this. I go like, they've got 3 other 4-irons that launch higher than that.
Wow.
But wouldn't you look at the release? I go, yeah, you could, but like when that's fixed, the season's over. You
Yeah.
could just put a different 4-iron in the bag. You're getting the height you need and just continue on.
Yeah.
And also full well knowing that if we're changing the release on how you're releasing your long irons, we're likely also changing the release on how you're launching your short irons. That means
Yeah.
we're changing spin, we're changing launch, we're changing how it's going to be effective in the wind, we're changing how it's coming out of rough. We're like we're changing everything,
Yeah.
right? So, and again, like I would have said, like 8 years ago, I wouldn't even have thought that far. Go, yeah, I'll take a video and go, yeah, that's why it's going. That's why you're launching it low, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the thing there as well, can I just say quickly, Andreas, I think
yeah,
that also comes with wisdom and time as well, doesn't it?
yeah,
And it's also ego, I would say, right? Because when you're fixing release patterns, you're the clever person that came up with it. You're fixing their swing,
yeah.
and you feel good about yourself. When you just say change your irons or change the ball, like it doesn't reflect on you as a coach necessarily in terms of how brilliant you are at fixing golf swings. So I think that often we're changing,
Yeah.
the action because it makes us feel better about ourselves. Whereas like when you just
Yeah, there could be something about like, yeah, listen to how smart I am.
listen to how smart I am. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, which, well, I mean, I've tried that. I did used to feel like that as well. And that turns out it's not going to make you any happier. So what's the point in that, right?
Yeah.
What really makes you happy is helping people. And it doesn't really matter like how many words you did it. And what you actually find out is, at least for me, the brilliance is in like path of least resistance. Like how much crap can I get done in the least amount of words?
Yeah.
And I think again, like what I'd say is over time, as the boys and girls have gotten better and better and better and better and better.
Yep.
I wouldn't say the priorities have changed. They've just expanded. And all of a sudden you just find out that there's like so many ways to help improve a player.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be how they're swinging the club. Now, it could be how they're swinging the club for sure. And it's likely is if they're not very good.
Yeah.
But there's also so many other ways. And then you got to get into, again, then you go like for some players, it's super important actually how they swing it and how they hit it. And they like, that's the reason why they dedicate this much time, is actually like crafting away and improving the swing and the technique. And like that's why they play. But then you'll have other guys who's like, dude, I just want to compete against the best in the world. That's all I want to do. And I could give two shits about how it looks or the numbers it produces. If you're telling me that this is good enough to win, I'm good. I don't need to watch it on video. I don't care if it cuts or draws. I don't care, as long as it can compete. And those are two completely different drivers, right? For spending this much time. And the problem also becomes that if you're treating the one who's trying to improve his craft, like it's really important to him to play the proper way, you're telling him that's good enough to win, he's gonna like, he might go, yeah, but in the back of his mind, he's gonna go, bullshit. Like that's what. And the other way around, you'll have guys who are like, I don't care how it looks.
Yeah.
I just want to compete.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't have known that, but I learned that along the way, that like, why did that golf lesson go well, or why did that go really, really poorly? It turned out that I thought he came because he wanted to shoot the lowest possible round. And what he really wanted to do was like master this swing thing.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
100%. Yeah, which is so, I mean, that's such it's funny about like the way you teach, it's obviously incredibly malleable, but at the same time, like there's a belief system behind it. Like I've always admired about you is that you can always look at the way, Kali is teaching and look at it and go, well, there's clearly a model there, right? There's clearly something there. Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of like, strong belief systems loosely held is almost the way I would say it. So you've got like strong frameworks, but you really easily move outside of those frameworks, sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Like the real point, like it would be too easy to just put on like some sort of thing on top of everybody and go, this is the superior way to swing a club. When
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just paying attention, right, you'd know that John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler don't look like anything alike. So
Yeah.
apparently there's not that superior a way.
Yeah.
However, you still need to have some sort of model, and you have to have a model in place or a system in place that can explain why John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler are really good at hitting a golf ball in two very different ways.
Yeah. There are some absolutes, but there's not a lot, are there? You know,
No.
And when you look at your players, whenever I look at, Instagram and I look at your players, they all swing it the same, but they all swing it completely differently. You know, like some people are more shut, more open. Like, it's sort of like there's something there, obviously, but like you're obviously, you let people move down that path that they're doing, or like whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I mean, it is what it is, right? I put my stuff on social media. What I usually post is just golf swings. I'm not selling people what they're working on, what they're trying to get accomplished, but whatever. I just post swings. And of course, that makes it look like all these guys are doing the same.
Yeah.
I'd still be surprised if you really cut it down. Like you'll see some similarities that are very, very similar, but I think those are the same similarities you'll see in the best in the world.
Totally.
And then on the other hand, you'll also see a lot of nuances and a lot of personality in it, and the way they play the game is very, very different. And I think to have a really good system in place, there should be kind of all encompassing.
Totally. And no doubt, like as your players are getting, I mean, obviously you still teach a lot of really young players, but like as this cohort is moving more on tour, that has to completely change the way you coach as well. Like as you said before, you can't start changing release patterns like halfway through a season necessarily. Like all of a sudden it's like we've got to make like little incremental things that are going to get this card, like a full card on tour next year. We've got to do these little incremental things. It's not like so that must be evolving. You've got kids that are like 13 that maybe they're like a little piece of clay you can really rip apart, and like
got kids that are 6.
Yeah, 6. Wow.
Yeah. That's the age range right now, goes from 6 to 27.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. That's amazing.
And I think if you're getting out on tour and you're like in your early 20s, we kind of should be done with the swing.
Yeah.
I think I can find a lot of other places to improve than how they're swinging it. I don't think the way the players I coach swing it is the problem. I know that for a fact. What really can actually frustrate me quite a fair bit is that we used to spend a lot of time on just basically getting proper strike, sound, flight. And you come out on DP World Tour and you go like, and I'm not trying to be arrogant or sound arrogant, but I've got 6 guys and hitting balls in the middle of a racehorse track who are playing 3rd level golf, who hit it better, like strike the ball better than 85% of the DP World Tour.
Yeah.
So if it was all about how you're striking it and how you're flying it, well, then they would be playing there. They're not playing there. So are we going to practice more swing and like hit it even better? I don't think so. They're already hitting it good enough. Like they're hitting it way above average tour professionals who are actually making a good living. They're hitting it above that. So we got to figure out what the other ways are. And when I look back on it, we're picking up the slack in those parts. And if I could start over, I would still have spent a lot of time on how to hit a ball properly, but I would also have spent more hours distance control, again, hitting the right shot into the right winds, different, like all these different things. How do I like composure on the course, letting go of shots or not sticking with negative emotions, and like all these different things for sure.
But that's also, I mean, to play devil's advocate a little bit, that's could be a byproduct of like your environment. You know what I mean? You can't go out in the middle of winter and play on golf courses. Like, you can only really do it for 6 months of the year, 7 months of the year, unless you're getting playing. So it's probably a byproduct of that, where you're just like inside and you're just grinding away on, what you can. Yeah.
Yeah, some of it is, but I still think like I think I'm fortunate, right? Because I can't exactly tell a 7-year-old what it takes to get on the DP World Tour, but I can probably say what it doesn't take,
Yeah.
right? I can at least put in like look at like in a 14-year-old, like the amount of hours they're putting in, how are they putting those hours in, what's the engagement, all these different things. And I can just say like you're not unless you're more talented than Marcus Hedekile, Rasmus Nygaard Peterson, Sebastian Friedrichs, and Jakob Skoles, and unless you're more talented than them, I don't think you're doing enough
Right.
because they were doing more than you at this time.
Wow. Yeah. Right.
And I think that actually, I mean, it makes my life easier because now I actually have references.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for me in regards to parents. Like my
Yeah.
resume says, I know what I'm talking about. We don't need to argue. I'm the expert.
Totally.
So I think, and on top of that, I think the fact that some of the guys that practice in the indoor facility at the racetrack, they'll overlap with some really young kids, and all of a sudden the guy who is playing where they would like to play when they become older,
Yeah.
like he's right there. He knows my name. I can see him practice. I can touch him. I can feel him, which makes it way more realistic. So I think I'm actually getting quite a bit of improvement for free now.
It's awesome. It's amazing. So, with all this that you've learned, do you want to just tell us about exactly like what you've built now? Because it's been in demand for a long time. You've been, so many people have been asking you for a framework of how you teach. What is in this course that coaches can now purchase and access from you?
Yeah, so well, it's called something as generic as my coaching philosophy because
All
really
right.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
I I think a lot about golf. I have a lot of opinions about golf on my mind. And finally, I actually got the chance to get them all out. So I did a 2-day seminar where it's more than 8 hours of basically theory and my thoughts on golf, right?
Yeah.
So it covers a lot of ground because
Mm.
I think it's actually that's the important part is that it's not just there's a lot of golf swing in there, but there's
Yeah.
also a lot of everything else because I think it's the honest thing to say is that there's all these things, at least for me, that I've found that will improve player performance, right? So it's basically there's a little bit of my backstory. How did I end up where I ended up? I haven't been in the game for this long, right? I've been
Mm.
coaching, I think I'm entering my 14th season.
Yeah.
Um, I've and it honestly feels like it was yesterday that I started up.
Yeah.
There's something about our junior academy. I think I can wouldn't be too far fetched to actually say that I think we're running the most successful junior academy in the world if we're looking at
Yeah.
performance. Not if we're looking at economics and finances. I know we're for sure not, but if we're just looking at players getting better,
Results. Yeah.
for sure. Unless there might be somebody in Korea who could beat us, but I think that would be it. So what are we doing at our junior academy? What are our beliefs? How do we set these things up? How do we arrange the practices? How do we divide the players into groups? Top of that, there's quite a bit on ball flight and ball flight laws because I think that's actually really really important.
Yeah.
There's some stuff on demonstrating you can actually control ball
Yeah.
flight. There's a whole set on my model, which is really, really in depth, going through and it's not like this is how you should swing a club, but this is my reference model. This
Yeah.
is everything I look at when I go through a golf swing, depending on what the players' issues are.
Mm.
On top of that, I've added some new stuff on like faults and fixes, and it's actually looking through a swing and like if we take this one element, what would this do to a path?
Mm.
Would it move it right or left? And you could take that path and flip it. So you go, okay, what does it do to the angle of attack? Does it move it up or down? What does it do to low point? Does it move it backwards or forwards, down
Mm.
or up? What does it do to the loft? What does it do to the ball speed? What does it do? Like, so I can actually start looking at a human being who has these issues with his ball flight. I can relate it back to how he moves, and I can actually start to predict that I wonder if I moved this guy over here or moved his arm over here, I would expect this to happen to the ball flight. I think all coaches have that. They might not verbalize it the way I do, but they do have
Mm.
some sort of predictive model in place.
Mm.
I would expect this to happen, and if they don't, they should.
Yeah.
And there might be some who just looks at the first thing they find wrong and go, yeah, I'm just going to change that grip. Why? Because it's wrong. That's not a good answer.
No.
No, but I guess some might. So we're doing that. Then it's, as you can hear, it's quite comprehensive because this is
Yeah.
probably like half the seminar. Then
Unbelievable.
there's a bunch of talk on all the elements that I think goes right now that I'm at that goes into becoming the world's best approach player. Like these are all the things you can look for.
Right.
Not only what you can look for, but also how I would practice these different elements, or at least how we do it. Then we're talking about constraint-led approach, so setting up games for groups where you actually put pressure on your players, where you can have 8 players going at the same time in one session. You can actually pay attention to how are they doing, like how are they doing in the technical changes you're making. Do they show up when they're under pressure, or the bad shot showing up that we're trying to avoid, right? Or whether it comes to putting or chipping. What else are we talking about? We're talking about, I've got a boatload of games I added in there. I'm just going like, these are the ones I came up with.
Wow.
Take them, at least take the framework for them and change them to whatever fits your students, right? I have one of the things that I feel like it keeps going over people's heads because I went through it pretty quickly, but it's on like spectrums and catalogs on how I would like actually divide good and bad players, where I would look, how I would study it. So you can actually just sit at home and just study golf swings and figure out like what are the actual similarities between good players and poor players. So there's more because there's people there, there's questions, there's precision on like grips and grip pressure and placements and like just a whole host of everything that I never really get to share.
Well, it's like, as you said, it's over 8 hours of information, which is absolutely wild. That's going to take people probably a few weeks to get through, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Especially if they're going to really consume it the right way. So we might need like a Skillest AI summary involved in like
probably it would shorten it down. But I mean, the cool part has been that ever since I launched them, the reviews have been really, really good. And I don't think it's just people being nice to me. I actually think turns out it is a pretty decent piece of work.
Your results speak for themselves, and there's this no doubt, like both of us know, I get asked about you all the time, you obviously get asked to share your wisdom. So, and I think it's so cool these days because like when we were kids, like you used to have to get on a plane and go and sit next to someone for like 3 weeks to try and get that sort of information, and now you can just consume it in your own time. Like it just, and it's not something I've definitely noticed, is that younger coaches are definitely better than probably what we were when we were, 23 or whatever it was getting started. So, this is absolutely unmissable, I think. And you've got, I think we'll put a discount code for people in the description.
Yeah, for sure.
Get it. So if you want, I'll put all the details in the email and in the follow-on message with this. But Andreas, I think it's just like the coolest thing ever that you've done this. Obviously you've now, I think all great coaches end up coaching the coach. You know what I mean? Like it turns into eventually you hopefully can like, you're probably always going to be training students, but coaching the coach is where you can almost have a bigger influence, really.
Yeah, well, that's been the point, really, because it hasn't been the point to tell everybody else, like, all right, listen to what I'm doing.
No.
But the problem that we end up with, at least that I've ended up at, is there's only so many hours in the day. I've got a wife, I've got a dog, I got 2 kids that I actually really enjoy spending time with.
Yeah.
So what can I do to help more people? I've only got so many hours. My day's full. I guess I could hire an assistant or something, but that's not going to be me. Like it's not going to be the same.
No.
And what ended up resonating with me was if I can help coaches improve, because I can see my students are improving. So there's got to be something I'm doing that's pretty good. If I can help coaches, and it doesn't have to be the same way that everybody has to do like me, but at least if I can inspire and they can take something away from what I do and add that to their framework, hopefully they can give more golf lessons. They can give better golf lessons. A lot of people start improving and they honestly become more competent at this game and they'll love it more. And that was really the point that made sense to me.
Awesome, Andreas, mate. I can't thank you enough for your time, and thanks for doing this because I think it's going to make coaches on our platform better at what they do as well. So thank you so much for being a part of our platform and like sharing your wisdom. It's an amazing thing. So thanks so much, mate.
It's been a blast, man. I remember logging onto this thing back when there was nothing. It was just an empty shell.
Totally. It was literally,
Yeah.
it was probably only a couple of months old of software development back then. And,
Yeah.
it was nothing except the ability really to upload videos and take payment for it and a little analysis
Yeah.
tool. That's all it
And
was.
it was, yeah, but it was actually really good, and it's still good at that as well. And now it's just expanded to something much more than that, which is really cool.
Well, stay tuned. Lots more coming. But Andreas, thanks so much for your time. And everyone out there, get involved in this because it's just going to make you a better coach.
Yeah, if you got questions and stuff, I suck at emails, but write me a DM on my Instagram. I'll get back to you when I have a minute. If you have questions regarding these things or whatever, I'll happily answer.
Perfect. Thanks, mate.
Cool, man.